Welcome. Hi, friends. So we're just getting settled and having everybody enter. Go ahead and feel free to put in the chat bar your name, where you're visiting from. Visiting? Where you are, I guess. Do you visit Zoom? I suppose so. Joining, that's the word. Where are you joining from? Florida, Ohio, Washington, and Colorado, Alaska, Massachusetts and California, Minnesota and New York, Canada, Delaware, Boston, Georgia, Chicago, Arizona, Dusty, Oregon, the Navajo Nation, and Oakland, Canada, New York, all across, all across. Welcome, everybody. And Jenna, do you want to invite everybody in?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rosemary. Hi, and welcome everyone. My name is Jenna Kirkpatrick, and I am the manager of outreach and engagement for Evermore. Evermore is a national nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C. Our mission is to make the world a more livable place for bereaved people. We are changing policies and practices within our communities and across our nation so that all bereaved people can achieve a healthy, prosperous future. Please visit us at evermore.org to learn more. We will also be sharing a special newsletter with you after this workshop called Evermore Voices. It will contain the recording of this workshop, the collaborative poem that we write tonight, and the featured poems and invitations to write from Rosemerry. I'm also a poet and a bereaved mom, and every morning I read Rosemary's poetry, and one that recently struck my heart was called Sound Bath, and I'll read you just a tiny bit of that. Hear the traffic, the sobbing, a swelling of symphony, gunshot, thunder of feet, the whimper of an infant. The world enters us in waves, waves that seep through the doors, and we wade in them. Waiting, we come to know there is no way to not be touched by every other life, no matter how distant. If you put your ear to the moment, sometimes you can hear every other ear listening for what you will do next. My wish tonight is that the words that we share hold each of you in community and understanding. Together, we're here to hold this space with each other. Let's please take a few seconds for some deep breaths and silence to acknowledge all of our precious light and energy. Please join me in welcoming our beautiful and gracious friend and Evermore Poet Laureate, Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. Thanks for bringing us in with silence. And how sweet, in fact, that you chose that poem about the sound waves, because I wanted to start us tonight with a poem by Langston Hughes that talks about how we show up to meet our grief. And so I invite you to either close your eyes and listen or keep them open if you prefer, but just listening to these words of Langston Hughes as we start. Wave of sorrow, do not take me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island, the sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island, the sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. Langston Hughes. Welcome, friends. Welcome. I welcome you. I welcome all of the love that you bring with you tonight. I welcome all of the complex feelings that you have tonight as we show up to meet grief. Um, I welcome the lives and the love of the people who you're bringing and the grief that you're bringing. And so I just want to invite everyone right now. I'm going to light a candle in honor of that light, of the love light of the people who you are bringing with you, and the light of you. And as I light this candle, I invite you to write into the chat bar, what or who are you grieving? I understand that sometimes there are many things. So it could be the name of a person, but it could be other kinds of grief too. It could be grief for our planet. It could be grief for our country. It could be grief. So many ways grief shows up. So I'm just going to invite you to put it into the chat bar right now as I light my own candle. If you have one, feel free to light a candle there in your own home also. And I'm also going to invite you to, as the names go through the chat bar, to not only say out loud, um, with yourself muted, say out loud the name of someone who you are grieving, but also choose to say out loud the name of someone else too. Finn, Dad, Teddy, Gail, Farron, fractured family. In saying each other's griefs out loud, how we honor each other, honor the person who's here to meet this grief. One of the most beautiful things that was said to me the night that my son died, my friend Wendy said to me, "He has given you his love light to carry." So I honor the love light that every one of you are carrying right now. Tonight, if you haven't been with us before, welcome. If you have been with us before, then I hope that you'll help everyone else here to feel welcome also. What are we going to do? We're going to be doing I'll read some poems and we'll write a group poem, and then we're going to read a couple other poems together. We'll read the poem out loud, we'll talk about them. I'll offer you some writing invitations. You'll have lots of time to go off and do some writing. We'll come back and talk about process. There's an optional time for sharing at the end. No one has to share. I just want to let everybody know right now that if you want to, there's going to be a chance for you to share in small groups, but there's also a chance for you to stay in the main group and just listen if that's right for you, or to talk about process if that's right for you. So just letting you know, that's kind of the arc of our time together. There is zero expectation for you to do anything. In fact, you have nothing to do except show up. Just showing up is all you needed to do. Maybe you're going to write, but maybe you won't. Maybe you bring a willingness, maybe you bring an unwillingness. Really, whatever you've brought, you are right where you belong, and you can only do this right. What I know about writing and meeting grief is that it won't fix anything, that there is no way for writing to make things better. And I don't know if I even believe in the word healing. I don't know what that would even look like. So it's not a way to fix, it's not a way to heal. It is, however, a way for us to be really curious about, wow, where am I right now? How do I meet this moment? How do I meet every moment, in fact, as a new moment, as I continue to explore this relationship with grief? How do I be very curious for what's true right now? How do I question what I think is true? How writing sometimes, I think, really allows us to see how opposite feelings can be both true at the very same time. And writing helps us to get in touch with that. And I think writing can also help us just be very still. So much of writing looks like not writing. So if you don't write a single word tonight, friends, but you show up, that's the real practice. And the writing, in fact, is just a byproduct. I want to make everyone promise not one of us is going to write anything good tonight. That is not what we're here to do. We're not here to write good poems. But I also think that what everyone can do, if you do any writing at all, you could write something true. Let that be your invitation. Can I write something true tonight if I write at all? Uh, Whatever you feel, that's what you're going to feel. Grief is so different for all of us, from moment to moment, from grief to grief. Um, so we'll just honor that everyone is going to have a different experience and that you are completely in charge of your own experience. So to begin, I'm going to read a poem. It's one that I wrote. I suppose that kind of honors how who knows our own grief better than us. I'm guessing that all of you have also perhaps gotten really advice that didn't really work for you about meeting grief. And so this is a poem called No Matter What They Say. You do not have to get over it. You will carry your grief and be carried by loss in any way the carrying happens, as if you had a choice. Grief builds rooms inside you no one else will ever see. Rooms with doors only you can pass through, filled with songs or silence only you can hear. Rest here, or dance here, shout or whisper, rise like milkweed seeds on the wind, or lie down. Here you can only do it right. Here there are no other eyes or ears to tell you what to do, or how long it will take, or what choices to make. And if you are weeping, weep. And if your eyes are dry, you are dry. The rest of the world can talk about stages of grief and how it should be, but you do not have to listen. This poem, and in fact, all of the poems that we share tonight, are going to be coming to you tomorrow with the recording, so that'll show up in your inbox. But right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a couple little sentence stems, and we're going to write a group poem, which is, I'm going to invite you to put into the chat bar. So if you could give yourself some advice, what would that advice be? And so, in offering ourselves the advice you need, here are two ideas. And if you would go ahead and Jenna and put this slide up on the screen, you could fill in the blank with something like, today you can, right? Today you can not go to work. Today you can cry as much as you want to. Or today you don't have to, whatever it is, you can go ahead and just give yourself the advice that you need to be able to show up. So I'm going to invite you to put it into the chat bar, and then I'll read these out loud. And in this way, we'll just create a group poem that is honoring what is it like to show up to meet grief today? What is the permission that you need? Today, you can just make it through. You can breathe. You can slow down. Today, you can be kind to yourself. You can cry. You can wail. You can give yourself grace. Today, you can go outside and listen and listen and look up into the sky and watch the clouds. Today, you can create beauty any time of day. You can be kind to yourself. You can just listen, be quiet. You can do, but slowly. You can both laugh and cry. Today, you can, or not. You can stop, be still. Today, be just how you are. Sing, feel her love, laugh and dance. Decline invitations to be social. Lie on the couch and do nothing. Today, you can rest. You can surrender to it. You can be spacious and slow as you want to be. Today, you can stop being brave. You can claim your sadness. You can be perfectly imperfect. You can be. Today, you can feel all your feelings. You can do it your way. You are already doing it right. Today, allow everything. Today, you can grieve for your son, Daniel, who we lost last year to fentanyl poisoning. You can welcome your own truth. You can grieve the loss of ever knowing her. You can stop and feel and feel and feel. You can remember and speak the memory out loud. Today, you can show up for your love and your mistakes. You can do absolutely nothing. You can weep uncontrollably. You can be raw. You can do nothing. You can still feel empty and find there only pain. You can follow your rhythms without interruption and wail and remember her laugh and smile. You can remember some of the meaningful memories. You can crack your heart open wider and laugh and be joyful if it comes to you. Of course, it's difficult. You don't have to stop crying. You don't have to be okay. You don't have to get out of bed. I'm going to stop there, friends, but I'm going to invite you to continue reading the rest of them. What a gorgeous, gorgeous invitation poem for how we might show up to meet our grief. Thank you so much. Jenna, if you would go ahead and put up on the screen, please, the slide for the first poem that we're going to read together. So the way that we're going to read poems together, I like to have them read out loud, and I like to have them read out loud twice, so that the first time that you're listening to the poem, I like to think you're being really active. You could even put your finger on your screen and underline with your finger inside the poem. Or just, imagine you're underlining in the air. What word, phrase, or image stands out to you, or what do you notice rising up in you? The second time you listen to the poem, I invite you to just lean back and be very curious about just you and your own response. Let the poem do all the work. Don't reach for it at all. Just let the poem land on you, and you just wonder, oh, where do I feel this? Where does it land? I need two people, please, to volunteer for reading the poem, and I'm unable to see you if you raise your hand. So what I'm actually going to need you to do is to use the reactions bar. And to do the reactions bar, if you would please just go to the bottom, you'll see it says react. There's a little heart there, and you can raise your hand. And thank you, Joanne and Rosemerry, another Rosemerry, for jumping in. Joanne, if you read it first, and then Rosemerry, please read it second. Thank you.
Let me just get my screen. Photograph of My Brother by Rob Cording. Half dressed, a pair of socks in my hand, I'm looking at a photograph of my brother framed atop my dresser. Dead now 5 years, he's hunched over his phone, a beer nearby on the table, looking up at the camera with that grin that showed off his dimples. I'm wondering who he was texting, imagining his smartass reply to our mom. So I don't notice at first my daughter. Why do you like that picture so much? She asks. How to respond to such a question? How to explain that I'm trying to imagine the way his shoulders would have turned as he looked up, to feel his strong hands, clean in this picture, but usually flecked with paint. How to say that I want to remember the sound of his voice better than I do. Because he looks so happy, I tell her, closing the dresser drawer. I sit on the edge of the bed, start to put on my socks. My daughter is looking at the picture now, when she turns and asks, but he doesn't know he's going to die, does he?
Thanks, Joanne and Rosemerry. You're still on mute, friend.
Sorry. Half dressed, a pair of socks in my hand, I'm looking at a photograph of my brother framed atop my dresser. Dead now 5 years, he's hunched over his phone, a beer nearby on the table, looking up at the camera with that grin that showed off his dimples. I'm wondering who he was texting, imagining his smartass reply to our mom. so I don't notice at first my daughter. Why do you like that picture so much? She asks. How to respond to such a question? How to explain that I'm trying to imagine the way his shoulders would have turned as he looked up to feel his strong hands clean in this picture, but usually flecked to remember the sound of his voice better than I do. Because he looks so happy, I tell her. I sit on the edge of the bed, start to put on my socks. My daughter is looking at the picture now when she turns and asks, but he doesn't know he's going to die, does he?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Rosemary and Joanne. What do you notice about this poem? Again, I'm going to need you, please, to raise your hand using the reactions bar. And I'd love to hear just what do you notice? Any word or phrase or image about this poem? Or what do you notice that it brings up in you as you were listening or reading it? Hi, Anne. Come on in.
I notice that we know now that her brother has a grin that showed off his dimples, that his fingers are are now flecked with paint, and we notice, I guess, that he looks so happy, and then, but he doesn't know that he's going to die, does he?
Yeah.
So the juxtaposition of those very specific views of what that brother's body looks like.
Yeah. Right, we get to really see the brother. Thank you, Anne. Just these beautiful, very specific details from the photograph that help us to see him the same way that the poet is seeing him, and how that contrasts, right, with that last line. Thank you. Charlotte and then Lori Janes.
I loved this because I have a picture of my son that I look at a million times a day. And when I look at it, it's like with this writing, I mean, I notice the ch different chin hair colors. And, I look at the rim of his hat and I look at the glisten in his eyes and I notice his cheekbones. And, it's like I almost can't stop looking at it. And I love this because it had that same very granular appreciation of the uniqueness of his brother and what made his brother special. The smart ass reply that also reminded me of my son. He was a smart ass. So it just I just could so relate to the love, the cherishing of the details of his brother.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So many beautiful details. And I love how you bring in that you have this experience too, looking at the photograph of your son. Yeah, just looking and just marveling. Look at him. Look at how he was. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlotte. Lori and then Jill.
Hi. What struck me about it was when he says that he's trying to imagine the way his shoulders would have turned, and then right after that says, "I want to remember the sound of his voice better than I do," and that really struck me because I I never thought there were things that my husband said that I would ever forget, and people told me to write them down. And I thought, I don't need to write them down. I will never, ever forget that. And then it's been 4 years, and I realized I'm starting to remember things. And those are the things that I want to remember that I wish I would have recorded, and I'm just so struck by the fact that you think you will never forget details, and you do. And it's devastating to me.
Yeah, that line is devastating. How to say that I want to remember the sound of his voice better than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And thank you for bringing that in. Lori, I know you're not alone in that just how things you thought you'd never leave, then they're gone.
Mm.
And then they come back, but then they come back fuzzy or they all, the partial and just
Mm.
and that loss, it's its own loss, its own line kind of loss also. Thank you. Jill, and then I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, Deo?
Just a brief comment. I like how the photograph described here and so many of the ones that I look at now. Um, oh, I might not have been unmuted. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are, for
Oh,
sure. We
okay.
hear you.
I like how the photograph that's described here and so many of the ones that I look at now capture this beautiful moment in time where we didn't know what was around the next corner. That loss was coming very soon.
Right. Right. Boy, that last line really gets us there, doesn't it? Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that in. The moments before we know about the loss. Thank you. Deo, I hope I'm saying it right.
You
Please
did.
correct.
You got it right. For me, I have pictures of my husband smiling, big, had a beautiful smile. And I look at those pictures and they mean so much to me because I feel that he's smiling at me. At least that's how I take it. I just let myself feel loved by those smiles. And he also left me some recordings on my phone that were for me when he knew he was dying, love messages. And I listen to those every day. And my poor little phone screen is covered with smudges because I kiss it, because it feels like he's in there. So those photographs and memories mean everything to me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And that beautiful detail about kissing your phone and the smudge screen. Yeah, and how precious it is to hear that voice and to have it right there. Thank you. Deborah, and then Autumn.
I almost feel like the title of the poem could be Looking or Look, because as I go back, I realize that word is used first, I'm the poet is looking at the photograph, and then his brother is looking up at the camera. And then down further, he's imagining how it would have looked as he looked up with his shoulders. And I love the way he repeats again, uh, why does his daughter ask she liked the picture so much? Because he looks so happy. And then to end by the last use of the look, my daughter is looking at the picture now.
Right.
The repetition just is wonderful.
Isn't that beautiful, Deborah? Thank you for that very close reading. And even I'm thinking now that the daughter's looking at him. I mean, that's a big, right? She's observing him looking at
Right,
the picture. Um,
right,
all
right.
of that looking. So just noticing all the layers of looking that are happening there. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And I was just thinking quickly in the contrast of being able to look at that one moment, but he's not able to remember, he's not able to remember the sound of his voice. So the contrast of those two senses really, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really potent, isn't it? What we can access and what is going beyond our ability to access. Autumn and then Dawn, I'm afraid we're not going to have time. If you want to put what's in the chat bar, that'd be wonderful if you put your observation in the chat bar. Autumn.
What struck me was about my own reflection about holding the beauty of a memory of a life and then also needing to hold the ending of the life.
Oh,
And how uh, sometimes the focus on a memory can be so beautiful and so happy. And then there's like this little bit that comes crashing in to talk about the ending of the story. Or when someone talks about someone passing, I don't want to focus on how they died. I want to focus on their life. And I feel like the way the poem's structured sort of holds that. It seems like the author is trying to really focus on the life. Um, but then there is the reality that the death is there too.
right. Autumn, that's such a thank you so much for sharing that and just how we're asked in a way to hold both of them, the life and the death. And maybe in any given moment, we'd rather focus on one or the other. This poem, a really beautiful reflection of both of them and how it brings that in at the end. Thank you for that. And I want to just thank every single person who just shared something with us. So vulnerable, so beautiful. Thank you for bringing your hearts and your voices to this poem and opening up this conversation. I just want to honor it's not easy. So we're going to have some time to do some writing now. And Jenna, if you would go ahead and change the slide. And I know that Keisha is putting both the poem and the writing invitation in the chat bar. So here are some ideas to do your own writing. I want to also let you know that if you don't like these ideas, you certainly do not have to use them. You could do whatever is showing up for you, whatever feels like is right for you. But here are a few ideas to get you started if you wish. Not that you would do all of them, right? Maybe just pick one and see if it works, and if it doesn't, try another. Um, so here's one idea is to look at an image of the one you're grieving and wonder about what you cannot know. For instance, what happened right before or right after the picture? Or what might the person be thinking? Or how do they feel? What do you feel as you look at this image? And what do you feel? What do you want to say to the person who's in the photo? Um, I understand that some people really are not able to look at photographs, and I honor that too. So I wanted to offer a couple of other writing invitations that aren't about a photograph. So just think of a moment when the person you are grieving was truly happy. What were they doing? Describe it in detail. How did you know they were happy? And what is it like for you now returning to that memory? And then the last idea is write a poem that would tell another person about the person you're grieving. Begin, I want to tell you about how he or she or they. And at some point, perhaps wonder, why does it feel important to share this window into the person who is gone? So there are three ideas, friends, but whatever you do, you can only do it right. I promise you. Once again, please do not write anything good. Invite yourself just to write something true. We're going to come back together at 50 minutes after the hour. 50. I'll give you a 1 minute warning and then I'll sing you in. And one more minute. And welcome back, friends. And if you would go ahead and I'm gonna put mine on gallery view so I can see everyone. I'm gonna invite you now, friends, to share, if you wish, not what you wrote, not the thing you wrote, but to share about your process. What did you notice about yourself as you showed up to this memory or this person? What did you notice as you were writing about your grief? And it could be, that it just flowed, and I'd love to hear that. It could be that you were totally stuck and couldn't even imagine that you could write a word. It could be about the feelings you experienced, or once again, I'm going to need you to please use the reactions bar. I won't be able to see you if you're raising your hand. And let us know, what did you notice about yourself? Joanne, thanks for jumping in.
Um, I noticed that I did not have, hmm, no, I'm going to start it over. I noticed that I addressed each one of those prompts. So there's a part of me that I could answer the first prompt and not go any further. So, okay, I go to the second prompt and I answer the second prompt. And I like what I wrote. And that sort of also ended. And I had time to do the third one because I could just sort of take little snippets, like, and that was enough.
Right. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing that. So just noticing that to be led, and then you could take it this far and then okay, done. And then go into the next, okay, and just noticing that there was a natural boundary there for you too. This is what shows up now and I'm ready and what's next. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Mary and then Johnny.
Um, is there only one Mary?
It's you. The correct Mary.
Okay. Um, I wrote to the prompt, I want to tell you about Howie. And I found myself like lots was coming, but I found that it didn't feel like it could be enough,
Oh,
that people wouldn't get to know how great he was. Like I just couldn't put it into words.
right. Mary, I cannot tell you how happy I am that you just brought this up. That's right. Of course not, right? There is not ever going to be a poem, and honestly, there's not even going to be hundreds of poems that would help somebody else really know the other person, right? I want to say that now how many hundreds, at least hundreds of poems that I've written about my son since he's died, I still haven't captured him, right? So knowing then that it's an impossibility to capture this person, excuse me, in a single poem, uh, and not ever, right? That their life will always escape it. So that's a given. That's a given. And yet, for me also, the closeness, I think, to him that I experience when I try. It's so that there's something for me, both, I suppose, frustrating and pleasurable about the attempt. Yeah, thank you for bringing that in. I'm certain that not one person in this room completely captured the person that they were talking about. We have Johnny and then Elizabeth.
Hello, everybody. I didn't connect to any of the prompts, but I used to have a photo of myself and my girlfriend in the ceiling. I've been in a distant relationship for a while, and what I noticed is that like the photograph as almost like a tethering post, like an anchor made me able to enter the grief of the end of the relationship. And I have taken the photo away. So it was very clear for me that there was a photograph. In my mind, it was very present, and I was I think I was able to go deeper into how painful this is because I could hold it, a little bit outside myself and be with it in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Just the way that the photograph helps us to really enter into the emotion of it, explore that more deeply. Thank you, Johnny. Elizabeth, and then Robert.
Yes, I started out with that prompt of um, applied to my first cousin with whom I grew up and who is no longer. She died a year ago, and I find I'm missing her because she's, along with my brother, um, one of the very few people who knew me when I was very, very young. And that prompt of thinking of her, when was she really happy? And I realized that so often others can see in us what we don't see in ourselves. And so she never, as an adult, claimed to be happy. She was always looking at the hard side of life and the glass being half empty. And I saw so much in her that I'd seen from the time we were in elementary school together. And she never knew why I was come and visit her, and she was a recluse. In Martha's Vineyard, and I tried to visit her each year, even though I live in California, and it mystified her. And yet, so I'm just thinking so often, even as we age, we don't give ourselves credit. We buy into a story that someone may have told about us, which is not the true story.
Right, right. Beautiful. And how writing allows us to be really curious about those stories.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Robert, and then Karen. I know we'll have time for you, and we'll see how many more we get. Do you need me to help you unmute? I'm going to just send you a little note that says unmute. You're not unmuted yet, though.
Thanks.
There.
Um, I wrote the poem about my son, and the first two stanzas I really wrote about his qualities and it brought like a deep feeling to me to try to convey that to somebody else in those first two stanzas. And then the last two stanzas I wrote what parts of our relationship um, and um, and that was deeper for me, getting into the grief of it. And even it's been, as I said in the chat, it's been 25 years ago today that he passed away, and so it really hit me strongly when I saw your invitation to this workshop at just after midnight my time, um, and I said, "Oh, I think I know what I have to do today." So anyway, it was a great process, and I'm glad that you had the prompt to not write in a great way, but to write in a true way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And what a beautiful thing. I love hearing you say that you were able to write both just kind of the description of him, but then also this emotional part and how the poem becomes an entry, into both of them, and how one of them, one of them almost brings up the other and opens the door for the emotional world to come. Thank you, Robert. Karen, and this will, friends, I'm sorry, this is going to be the last person we're going to have time for right now. I'll just say, though, that we will have time to talk more about process if you stay in the main room instead of going to a small room. Or if you want, please go ahead and put, I noticed lots of people have put some really interesting things in the chat bar, so please do put some things in the chat bar. Karen, was it you who did I just say was going to be our last person?
Karen, yep.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you. I took a photograph down in my room just to look at my sister. It's my sister that I'm missing. And it just took me right into the photograph. It was so beautiful. So then when I sat with it, looked at her and myself, it's both of us together. And then I started to write, and it was just like, oh, she's right here. It was so beautiful. It's just like, yes, you're here. And it just felt so close and happy, actually, even though she's really missed. But it was a beautiful process. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. I love what you say, and I know this is the experience that I have also, is that when I write about the people that I'm missing,
Mhm.
there I guess I didn't know this could happen until I did, that in a way it helps us to continue our relationship with them.
Mhm.
It allows for that relationship to even continue to grow, which I'm in utter astonishment about how writing and for me also, not just writing, I'll say it's also just talking to them. But writing to them has been a really big part of that practice for me and continuing to nurture and grow from that relationship myself. Um, Thank you, friends, for putting the other comments in the chat bar, and I'm going to go through and look. I invite everyone to go back through and look at those comments too. We're going to do another poem now, and I guess I want to say this, that there are really, I've noticed two kinds of grief poems. One of them is the kind of grief poem that allows us to continue the relationship with the person who we're missing. Um, the other is to explore our relationship with grief itself, which was something I didn't know was going to be such a profound relationship. But my relationship with grief has been, wow, it's quite a bit to meet grief. So that's what we're going to be doing. The next poem we're going to look at is by James Cruz. And if you would please, Jenna, put it up on a slide, and Keisha is going to put it in the chat bar for anyone who wants to read it there. Once again, I'm going to need, please, 2 volunteers to read this poem. If you would go ahead and use the reactions bar so I can see that your hand is up. And I see we have, thank you, Philippa and Carol. Thank you. And Philippa, if I'm not saying your name right, please correct me.
Not the Only Thing by
Oops, you were unmuted and now you're muted again, honey. There you go.
Not the Only Thing by James Cruz. This grief is not the only thing in the room. There is a bed, a chair, a glass of water lip marked around the rim, proof that you are here. There is a window, and beyond that, tiny white blossoms called asters after the distant stars they resemble, now opening at the edge of the woods. Don't say yes, but they mean the end of summer, the waning of daylight and pleasure. Beauty still orbits every ache like a flock of blue azures, small butterflies that hover over a puddle and do not think, yes, but the water will soon be gone. They simply flex their wings and drink.
Not the only thing. This grief is not the only thing in the room. There is a bed, a chair, a glass of water, lip marked around the rim, proof that you are here. There is a window, and beyond that, tiny white blossoms called asters after the distant stars they resemble, now opening at the edge of the woods. Don't say, yes, but they mean the end of summer, the waning of daylight and pleasure. Beauty still orbits every ache, like a flock of blue azures, small butterflies that hover over a puddle. And do not think, yes, but the water will soon be gone. They simply flex their wings and drink.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Carol. So what do you notice about this poem? Specifically wondering about what is our relationship with grief like right now? What do you notice about the poem or about yourself as you read it? Leslie.
Well, one thing I'm struck by with both this poem and the other poem is I almost feel a little bit of friction with it because I feel like in both there's a desire to like push me out of my grief. Like there's this but this too, but this shiny thing, but we're okay. And I know that grief is so painful, but I feel like giving ourselves the space to honor it is also so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I could not agree with you more, friend. Um, in fact, one of the writing invitations that I offer coming out of this poem is going to be don't pretend the grief isn't here. Like how don't like notice that here is the grief. The grief is here in the room. Yeah, there's a chair and a glass and there's also grief. So yes, thank you. Thank you for just honoring that we don't need to push it away. We don't need to just notice what else is right. We can just stay with what's most difficult and what an important part of the process that can be. Thank you so much for bringing voice to that. Caroline and then Asha.
This is such a powerful poem. I mean, James is amazing. I discovered him thanks to you, so I'm very, very grateful again. It's a paradox poem. So he's talking about grief and he's telling that there is the glass with the mark of the lips, meaning you are here. So he's bringing you back, like we are in grief, and he's bringing you back here now. And is the most difficult thing to do when you are in grief, is to be here now with the immensity, intensity, infinity of the feelings, the energy. And he's inviting something with, this paradox of, yes, there is grief, but there is beauty. And it's something which can be extremely mental. Like people tell you, think of the good things, or think of the joy, like what we just said. Think of the good moments, but the good moments are gone. And that's what he brings in this amazing poem with this paradox, which, I cannot talk about it as well as you do. So I'm inviting you to talk about this paradox if you have time.
I think you said it perfectly, Caroline. That there it all is, right? There it all is. That the grief is here and there are other things here too. Which is such a, I think that sometimes, and I think that's part of the heart of this poem, is to the invitation, I think that he's saying, what I read in this poem, is to be as present right now as possible with whatever is here. Not worrying about what's going to be gone, not worrying about what things were, just know what is here right now. Grief is here. The chair is here. The glass is here. The puddle is here. Yeah, thank you. Asha and then Deo.
Great. Um, yeah, I think one of the things that's striking me about this poem, and in a lot of ways it mirrors the exercise that we just did, is that this poem is also just a snapshot. It's like just one moment in time. And I think sometimes with grief and with like when you've lost someone and something that feels very profound, um, we try to actually kind of capture the entirety of the story of it. And actually, the feelings themselves are so nonlinear, and the feelings just come in these like gut punches or these like snapshots. And I think that this poem has that freedom of like just that one moment. And that's what it felt like also to write to the photograph, that it was just that one moment. And you didn't need to know the end of the story when you were just focused on that one moment.
Right. Oh, I love how you said that, Asha. Thank you. And this is, I think, part of why I love poems for as a way to meet grief, right? Is because poems often are, they're not trying to tell the whole story. This isn't a novel, right? We don't want to tell the whole story of the person. We don't need to tell the whole story of our grief. Just touch this moment, what's here right now, this image, this moment. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. I've done a lot of work with people writing with grief, and I know that sometimes people do they want to put everything into one poem as if we could, but that's, I think, there's a frustration that happens when we can't. Of course we can't, right? Of course we can't. We will meet it again because of course also grief changes from minute to minute to minute to minute. We change. Our relationship with grief changes, not just minute to minute, but year to year. Um, our relationship with the person changes, as just like it does when people are alive, like it continuously changes. So, of course, the poem can only meet what is it right now. I love that you brought our attention to that. Thank you, Asha. And Deo, and then Johnny.
I think for me, when I let my grief fully take me, like all the way down, and the kind where you don't know if it's going to stop, you don't know if the tears are going to stop. They usually do, but when I go all the way, and then it's almost like it's like after the rain, when everything is sparkling and fresh, and after the tears, it's like everything looks so beautiful. So they kind of go together. And when your heart's broken open, there's just more love, and you can let it in and you can let it out. And so to me, it's been a gift in a way, that openness that I never had in my life before.
I
Yeah.
love that you spoke about that. And it's so right. Who could have guessed all the gifts that could come with grief? Who could have guessed? I would have never known. I could never, right? Could we ever have asked for them? No, the cost is way too high. And yet, to notice how beautiful the world is after we go all the way down into that grief, just like you say, and that it is possible to see how absolutely beautiful the world is, even as we're in this moment of great, great sorrow. Yeah, maybe not, maybe not always, but
Yeah.
but when
Yeah.
we're that broken open with that much vulnerability, how the world, the whole world, awful and beautiful, comes rushing in.
Mm.
Thank you, Deo. Johnny, and then Jessica, and then we'll do some writing.
The poem made me think that I once was a flower and I once was a butterfly, just shining, just drinking the water. Now I know more, so it's like in the tail of what you said, and also like I see flowers and butterflies all over the place, just drinking, just blooming, just drinking, just blooming.
Right, just letting ourselves be the flower and the butterfly and the human, and to see just how present it can be. Thank you, Johnny. And Jessica, this will be our last comment before we do some writing.
Hi. I just wanted to say that this really reminded me of that very, very, very initial like feeling of grief that it's so overwhelming and so consuming that it feels like there's nothing else that you can feel at that moment. And to me, it's almost like a backwards breathing exercise of like, yes, there's this big, immense emotion, but then it's like start noticing the chair, start noticing this, start noticing beyond the window, like kind of like coming back to your body and recognizing that there's still life all around, even in the midst of this really hard reality of death and parting and letting go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really interesting comment. I love that you point out that it has that kind of perfume of new grief where you really can forget that there's anything but the grief. I appreciate you bringing that in. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you made it in, by the way. So, friends, we're going to take some time now to do some writing again. And I have, again, three invitations for us to do something. And once again, I'll let you know that you don't have to use any of these at all. They're just ideas for you if you are wanting some. Here's one. To borrow James's phrase, grief is not the only thing in this room, and see where those words lead you, staying open to any small glimmer of hope or joy or beauty that calls to your attention. And then almost the opposite, right? Begin, please do not pretend grief is not here. And then invite others into the chance to be open with their grief or yours. So, often I think we go into a room and people just act like everything's okay. And you know what it's like when you're like, are you really going to pretend things are okay right now? It is not okay right now. Please don't pretend that grief isn't here. The last idea is to use this as an epigraph. Beauty still orbits every ache. Look at that powerful paradox. Beauty still orbits every ache. And write a poem that illustrates this, or maybe argues with it, or just wonders about it. So we're going to be writing, we'll come back together, friends, at 30 after the hour. Once again, I'll give you a little warning when it's time to come back. And one more minute. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. Welcome back, friends. So, what's going to happen next is we're going to have two options for you. One is that you can choose to go into a small group, or you can choose to stay in the main room. If you stay in the main room, we're going to continue to talk about process. We aren't going to share the poems that you wrote, but we'll just continue to talk about writing as a way to meet grief. If you go into a small group, there'll be groups of about 3, there could be 2, and what will happen in those small rooms is that you'll have a chance to share either something you wrote tonight. You might even be able to share both of the things you wrote tonight. You'll have 5 minutes. Or maybe you read what you wrote and you read it again. Maybe you read it twice. You could you could share just a part of something that you wrote tonight, the part that feels safe enough to share. You could not share anything you wrote and just talk about your process. Or you could say, you know what, I'm just here to listen. I really wanted to hear someone else read what they wrote. So those are perfectly wonderful things to do, all 4 of those when it's your turn to share. And if you are a listener in that time, because of those 15 minutes, 10 of those minutes you'll be a listener. What a gift, friends, to be a listener. To get to offer our attention to someone else and to be a witness for them. And so, with this role of listening, I'm going to invite you to do exactly that, to know that your job is to listen. I have so few rules. I always say, break all the rules I give you, except this one, friends. What we will not do tonight is critique. There will be no critiquing. We're not going to praise either. In fact, the only words I hope that you'll say to the other person after they share whatever they say, you can say, thank you. And perhaps this, you can ask them this question: what did you notice? What do you notice about your poem? Or what do you notice about your process? And then maybe they say something, whatever they say. And then the next thing you say is, what else do you notice? Really, those are the only questions I'm going to ask you to ask the other person. I want you to notice how that those questions are really, the whole point is to ask the other person to feel more deeply and to be more curious about their own process. It isn't about making a better poem. That's not what we're here to do. It's just about helping them wonder about themselves and about their own process as they use writing as a way to meet grief. So once again, thank you. And what do you notice about your poem? What else do you notice? Those are the questions we'll ask each other. Each person will have approximately 5 minutes. You're going to hear Jenna break in and she'll tell you time to change partners, so you don't need to worry about keeping time yourself. If you find yourself in a room all by yourself, don't worry. Keisha, who is incredible, is going to help move you into a room where you'll be with someone else. And so you won't stay in a little room by yourself for long. If you are on a phone, you will immediately get moved to a room. And if you don't want to get moved into a room, that's okay. Just tell it, leave small group and you'll come back to the main room. Okay. You're going to receive an invitation and you can either choose to take it or not. But before you go, I'm going to ask every single person to repeat these words after me. These are words I've adapted from Bill Plotkin of the Animus Institute. And please say them out loud right there in your own room. Are you willing to listen? With the ears of your heart to the other voices of yourself speaking. With that beautiful promise and invitation to yourself and to each other, Keisha, if you would go ahead and offer the invitations for people to go into small groups, and anyone who stays in the main room, I'll be right here with you too. Okay, I am going to guess that at this point, the people who are here are the people who want to be in the main room. And I'm just going to let you know that we're going to I'm going to break it up just a little bit. When Jenna comes in and she's going to tell people time to change, then I'm going to have to break you off and say, stop, please pause. You might be right in the middle of talking. And Jenna will come in and she'll make her little announcement, and then I'll invite you to keep talking again. So I just want to warn you that that could happen. And let's see. I'm going to open it up right now for anyone who has anything at all coming up. Anything that you want to talk about with your process, anything you've noticed about tonight, about writing poems, about writing as a way to meet grief. All of it is open for conversation about getting stuck, whatever is showing up for you right now. And Philippa, thanks for joining. Oh, you're on mute still, friend.
Thank you. So I usually write really quickly, and I've had the pleasure of doing a few of these with you, and I've written really quickly. And when we first started today, I just was totally stuck. And I kept thinking, okay, you said write a bad poem, and then I'd write something and I'd go, but not that bad. and that sounds like a kindergartner, you know. So there was this little, the judge going on in my head. And then I realized I was trying to make a picture of my friend Hannah who just died. And then I realized that I could just sit and enjoy the picture of Hannah in my head without trying to get it out.
Philippa, I love that you bring this in, and I especially love it because it's yet another illustration how of every single time we sit down, it's different every time. And I think sometimes we think, oh, but last time it was so easy. I just want to promise you that, I sit down to write a poem every single day, and I can't tell you how
Yeah.
many times it isn't easy. So many times I just sit there like, huh, it's not, this isn't easy today. And this is okay. I don't think it doesn't sound like you think it's a problem, but I just want to honor for anyone else who had the same kind of issue. It's not a problem. In fact, just having it not come easily is just part of writing. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I love that then you found this invitation to, okay, I'm just going to sit here with this image. This is what I'm here to do right now, is just to be with it and not need to make something out of it. I love that you shared that. Thank you, Philippa.
I do have a question though,
Yep.
please. So when it is hard, when I know you write a poem every day because I get them and they're just such a gift, and I think, do I make myself? I see the benefit in the discipline of insisting that I write something.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to say it's going to be different for everyone. Um, the promise that I make myself when I sit down every day is I will write. It's important to me that I do, because if I don't, the truth is that I know myself, then I might not write at all, right? Like I'd be like, well, not today, and then not today will also be not tomorrow, and not tomorrow will be not the
Right.
next day either. So this is the promise I make to myself because that's what works for me. But I often turn to the example of Jane Hirschfield, who I once heard in an interview say that she shows up every day to write, but if it doesn't happen, she's like, I showed up. That's good
Mm,
for her, right? So I feel like
mm,
you're going
mm.
to know for yourself if
Okay.
what works. What I know for myself is that I can lower my standards to the point where I can just write something. And that's really what it comes down to, right? It's just
Mm.
if I can write something true, then I'm like, okay, I did it. It doesn't mean I love it, but I can also promise you this, that if I can write something true, every single time I do that, I send it out. And then when I send it out, and I'm like, I know it's not a very good poem. And then how many people write to me and say, that's my favorite poem you've ever written? So this is the reason that's possible is because it's something true, and because if I can write something true, it will resonate with other humans
Right.
because they know, oh yes, that's what it's like to be alive too. So that's just that's why that invitation is so important to me. Thank you, Philippa.
Uh,
Christina. Oh,
it's okay.
okay. Christina?
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. My first husband died by his own hand 45 years ago, and my parents have since died, and there have been other certainly very important losses. But I've been writing the book about this particular loss for about 9 years, and I started writing a poem a day 2 years ago with the Stafford Challenge, which is Brian Moore's Rosemerry. You probably know about it.
I've
Uh,
heard about it.
it's been wonderful because normally I've written prose, and this is my way. And you were talking about, so I've written a poem every day for 2 years. Now, I must say, in response to what you were talking to Philippa about, sometimes it's one word,
Yeah.
sometimes it's one sentence. Sometimes it's a great poem, and they do have an anthology now. But Rosemerry, doing the grief, I loved how you said, writing the truth, writing your own truth. And also, I'm going to finish, this is the third iteration of the manuscript, but I'm going to finish it remembering all the good parts about him.
Right.
Because he left our two children behind and me, and he was very sad, but there were some really great parts about him.
Thank you,
So,
Christina. I'm going to pause you right now. It's time for Jenna to jump in and change
okay.
the.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Hi, friends. This is Jenna. It's time to change speakers, please. Thank you.
Thanks, honey. Yes, Christina, thank you for bringing that in. That I think this is one of the most important parts about writing is that writing allows us to choose the lens. Um, and I love that you say this is the lens that I've chosen. You know, I see the value here, and this is where I'm going to choose to focus, which I think is part of what's a long-term grief allows for that kind of, I mean, it changes and changes and changes.
And after he died, I started a support group because I was only 31, and all the support groups were for elderly people. But also, it's just wonderful to be in this group because grief is individual, but it is also a community. It's also a support. So thank you, Rosemerry. Between you and James, I got to meet James down in Portland. So
Thank you. It's true. It is, there is something very special that I also didn't know until I knew the communion of broken hearts, how beautiful and powerful it is when we come together. Thanks for speaking to that.
thank you, Rosemerry.
Jennifer and then Janet.
Thank you so much. I've signed up before for one of these and I wasn't able to attend, so I'm so grateful to come today. And Rosemerry, your poetry has been such a gift to me. I read the poem, one of the references with the love light, at my husband's celebration of life last month. And your poetry has just really helped keep me going. And it helps me reflect on just the beauty and the love that is there. Um, Even after they're gone. And that's something that I'd like to cultivate more of. My husband died very slowly,
from a degenerative disease. And a lot of my imagery is of him being very sick. And I'm trying to capture those memories, uh, from before that were just that I really treasure and want to keep alive. And that's something that I've just found so beautiful in your poetry. Just the ability to keep your love alive. And for myself and for our kids, I want to be able to write and share about just the extraordinary human who he was and the ways in which he continues to be. And I am an academic writer. I write academic articles, and I am trying to figure out how to access um, poetry, and I'm really drawn to it. And it's because of your work that I've been so drawn to it. So my question is really about process, sort of coming new to poetry and feeling that I really want to do this. Yeah. How do
Um,
you
I
how do you
have
approach
so many thoughts, friend. First of all, I hear that this is a recent grief, and I just honor your heart.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And probably the number one practice that I had that I share with people after Finney died, I wrote almost every day well, I didn't write at all for 7 weeks after he died, but when I began again, I began with this phrase, today grief is. And I would just let it, whatever came out, right? And often I was interested in the metaphors. So I would just look around me. Today grief is a window. Today grief is a river. Today grief is dirt. Today, grief is an earthworm. Today, grief is a candle. Today, grief is a drawer, right? Ladder, anything. I wouldn't know what it was. Why? Why is grief a ladder? I would have no idea. But I would just let myself wonder about what is a ladder? How does a ladder work? And what does a ladder have to teach me about grief? And in this way, it would open me up again and again. Every time I sat down to write, just that little phrase, and just by filling in today grief is a ladder, already there's that little part of us that gets curious, really, why, how? This was the most potent practice for me, and I'm so happy to pass it on to you. If you look at any of my books, the All the Honey or the Unfolding, you'll go through now and you'll be like, oh look, that's where that poem came from, right?
Like
Because
your red
they're
spatula,
and they
the poem about the spatula or something that you.
the spatula, right? Like all of these poems that they don't actually start anymore with today grief is, but they did start with this, right? They started with that and then they evolved out of maybe that first little phrase. But um, that's my first suggestion is just to let yourself start there. Also, just to read any poem that you love, that you're curious. Oh, we need a break.
Thank you. Hi, friends. It's time to change speakers. Thank you.
Any poem that you love, right? And just like we did, read it and underline any part of it that stands out and take that little piece that you underlined and put it on your own page and launch out of that and see what happens then. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer.
That's
And
beautiful.
Janet. Oops. Yeah, there you go.
Now am I muted?
Now you're good.
Okay. 63 years ago, when I was 9 years old, a young man who was a neighbor and my babysitter and my safe person in a very unsafe nuclear family, committed suicide. And I have carried that for 63 years. I will carry that to my death, I'm sure. And I have no photograph of him. And so after reading the photograph poem, I was feeling like this really resentless, that I have nothing I can look at. I have nothing of his. I was only 9. They didn't even tell me he had killed himself. I had to read about it in the newspaper, and I couldn't talk about it because my family denied it. And so I started the poem. My process was to start the poem, I have no photograph. And I just wrote from that. And then when I ran out of the thing, I started again, I have no photograph. And wrote from that and started again. And that was what I did.
Oh, beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to enter it, right? This is and in this way, right? Just starting with what's true, just starting with that what has all that juice for you, I have no photograph, and all the ache of that, and letting that be what guides you in to say it again and again. What a beautiful way to just invite yourself to be curious about it again and again and again. Yeah, thank you, Janet. I can also imagine another invitation for you would be, I wish I had the photograph of when he, or in my mind I have the photograph of when he. And you can create those little moments, even though you don't have a physical photograph. You could invite yourself to write into, if only I had the, or I wish I had the image of when he. Yeah, I
That
love
was
the
one
one
of
that
the
you did.
stanzas. I have no photograph, only the pictures in my heart.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Janet. And Dawn.
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, I love this because I don't consider myself a poet or a very good poetry writer. I do a lot of essay writing. And so I find that the process of this kind of writing and about grief becomes almost more artistic than when I'm writing an essay that is not necessarily factual, but there's just something that is different that happens in my mind when I write poetry. And it's extremely moving because I'm like, who wrote that sometimes, right? And the second thing I would say is I keep going back to the daughter who noticed, who asked her mom, what is it that you see in that picture? And it made me think about if my daughter and I each wrote a poem about her dad who passed away, how different our two poems might be. Coming from a perspective of a wife or a mother or a sister or a brother or a lover, and someone else writes about that person, and honoring my truth and also being able to honor the truth of someone else who might write a poem about that same person. And it just really, I keep thinking about that in that particular poem.
Right, you are so right, friend. A couple things. Just, of course, if you and your daughter both wrote a poem about the same person, it would be very different poems. Of course they would. And I think, oh, and if his friends wrote a poem about it, and if his parents, had written, or, just, yes, you're so right. It's going to be so different for each person. And yes, it is different to write a poem than it is to write a journal entry, than it is to write an essay. It is. It's a whole different kind of a portal that opens for us. I can't even say what a poem is sometimes. People say, "What is a poem?" I'm like, I don't even know. It's like it has line breaks, but some of them don't. It rhymes, but most of them don't. So what is it that makes it a poem? But I would suggest, at the very least, that a poem is something that has in it some opposition, right? That tugs on itself somehow, that it has something at stake in the way that it talks about what it means to be alive, that it's so open to our emotional um, landscape, and so open to just the physicality of a moment, equally open to both of those. Um, we say show and tell, and I think of it that way too. Yeah. Friends, it looks like everyone's coming back in right now. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to everybody who has been in a small group. Um, we have maybe room just for one or two more people. If anybody else wants to share anything about what are you noticing about tonight? Something about yourself, about your process. Not sharing what you wrote, but again, just anything that you're noticing about this process of showing up for what is here with grief. Johnny.
I think I found this particular container very potent to be in, to be able to freely, openly welcoming whatever kind of grief I want to be with. Really like a reservoir of thoughts, just relaxed, just open, just like receiving myself and giving myself to the paper, and of course listening to all this wonderful human beings alongside me. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnny. Yes, a reservoir of all the many, many griefs, and knowing that we're all welcome here, right? That it's just to hear with the ears of our hearts the voices, the other voices of ourselves speaking. Thank you. Jean and then Steve.
I will be brief because I know other people wouldn't talk. But the thing I really noticed too is about the contrast tonight of being in my head to being in my emotions.
Right. Right. I love that you bring this in. I love the way that poems invite both, right? I think poems really do invite us to bring both the head and the heart and
Yeah.
the body for that matter. We
Yeah.
didn't even talk about that. I don't know if anybody else had a body for the last 2 hours. You may have forgotten that you had one. I often do when
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
writing. But yes, when we can allow the body to also be part of it. And Steve, this is probably going to be our last one. Ellen, we'll see if we have time.
Good evening. Well, I noticed that normally in my life, let me back up. As I said to my small group, I'm going to be 71 years old next month. And I've noticed that a year doesn't go by that I don't lose two or three friends or family members. It's just constant. And so there's a part of me that just sort of, whoa, and, has moments of dealing with it, but mostly I just sort of trudge on. Um, and, uh, uh, and I've been having, hard grief issues around my daughter, who's alive and 23 and being 23. Um, and what I didn't get to share in my group is that I really loved the last piece where at least what I wrote about the beauty still orbits every ache, and to write about the beauty of those and then I wrote about a friend of mine, one particular friend of mine who died this year, who was literally joyful love incarnate. I mean, I actually could describe him to you. That's all you need to know. That was him. He was joyful love, unbridled incarnate. And to just write about that love and the love with my daughter was special.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for pointing out exactly this, that we don't always give ourselves time and it's not always available to us either. Just that it can be a luxury to have the time to really show up and say, okay, what is here, and to meet that grief. I really appreciate you bringing that in and that this is a space for us to do it. Ellen, I'm sorry we're not going to have time for your comment, but if you want to put it in the chat bar, I'm going to invite everyone right now to think, what are you taking away from our time together? It could be a line from a poem. It could be an experience you had. It could be something that someone said. What are you taking away from our time together tonight? And write it for yourself, but I'm going to also invite you, if you wish, to put it in the chat bar. An open heart, things change and they don't. I am not alone. Communion, communication, the permission to feel. A poem can be one word or one sentence. Gratefulness, undoing, aloneness, grief connects us. Write what is true. Those I've lost deserve a poem. Gratitude for the universe and technology bringing us together. Yes, friends. I'm going to just let you know that we have 6 more of these planned for next year. Those dates are on the Evermore site, but I'll let you know right now that the first 3 will be January 7th, March 4th, May 5th. You can find those on there. You can't sign up yet, but you can probably within a week on the Evermore site. And of course, they'll also be on my homepage, on my calendar on my website, which is wordwoman.com. And I also send them out with the daily poems. And so we're going to close, friends, by going back to that song that I opened us with, the one from Langston Hughes, Wave of Sorrow. And I'm going to go ahead and sing it again, but this time I'm going to leave space so that if you want to sing it along too, you can go ahead and just echo it, call and responsively, very kumbaya moment, but we'll sing it together to close our time together. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now.
Wave of sorrow.
Oh, please make sure you're muted though, friends, just because singing together on Zoom can be a nightmare. Okay, thank you. We'll sing that part again. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island, its sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. Thank you, friends. I want to thank so much Keisha, who is our tech support. I'm so grateful to you, Keisha. Thank you for everything that you do. I want to thank Jenna, who makes all of this happen and organizes it all. I want to thank Evermore for making it happen. Please do go to evermore.org and see all the incredible resources they have. And if you're able to support them, please do. Also, I should point out that Keisha works for Teaching for Change, and please check out Teaching for Change also. And Jenna, if you want to, Keisha, if you would put a link for that in the chat bar too, that would be so wonderful so people can see that. Thank you, friends. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm going to let this candle burn all night with all your loved ones in it.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Sweet sleep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemerry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemerry.